Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And today we've got a four-piece today in the co-captain's chairs. Let me introduce Mr. John Gaffney from Lair the Alchemist, Rich Catino from, of course, here on SOT, and Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, and the Metal Asylum, Metal Hall of Fame,
Yep.
a new wave of traditional heavy metal primer, my frequent co-collaborator on that.
Yep.
Welcome, guys. And we have a very special guest today. So he's been on the channel before. You all know him as the former bass player from Fate's Warning. He also plays with the Drover Brothers and Withering Scorn, and he's now also the bass player in the band that we're going to be ranking today, Liege Lord, Mr. Joe DiBiase. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, how you
Mhm.
doing?
Good.
Glad to be here.
What's up?
Yeah, I was just we were just talking beforehand. It's like, when John and Rich and I decided to do this a couple weeks ago, I think Joe and I were like kind of conversing in the comments section of one of the videos on the channel. I'm like, shit, Fates Warning and Liege Lord were like, very tight back in the day, Connecticut bands and whatnot. And then I was like, and I think he's playing with them now. We just bring Joe onto the show as well, because I'm sure you know the catalog.
Perfect.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it made total sense. So it's a short catalog, but the good thing about a short catalog and having a bunch of folks here in the panel is like we can really kind of talk about these albums. So Liege Lord, again, a American power metal slash speed metal band that was fairly active for a couple of years in the mid to late 80s and then just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. They've been more active on playing live dates of late, especially recently. We've lost one of their key members. Their original bass player passed away not all that long ago, which of course opened up the spot for to Joe to go join the band. But three albums. Originally, they were a Judas Priest cover band called Deceiver, I believe.
Yep.
Then got signed to what's the Black? What was it?
Black Dragon.
Black Dragon Records in '85. Then they went on to what Combat, and then Metal Blade, and then that was that. But a really cool catalog, one of the kind of unsung bands of this era that I think more people need to know about. And just speaking for myself, it's been an absolute pleasure immersing myself in these three albums over the last week or two. And I will say, very hard to rank these albums. They're all of such high quality. I think it comes down to the fact, like, what kind of production you like and maybe which singer you prefer. I think for me, that was kind of the key to making my decision. So we're going to rank them from 3 to 1. We're going to do 3 trips around. Joe, we're going to have you kick us off with your number 3 pick in the Liege Lord catalog.
Okay. And just to say, if you notice my shirt, this was a shirt that they made in honor of Matt for the Keep It True festival that we did last year in Germany.
Nice.
Matt was a great guy, and we did that, in tribute to him. That first show we did. So
Awesome.
cool shirt.
Yeah.
All right. This was tough for me, also, especially the first two. But I am going to, for my number 3, go with the second album, Burn to My Touch. This, I know it's the second album, and they were a little more advanced than the first one. I wasn't crazy about the production. Actually, I'm not crazy about the production on all 3 of these records, and they'd be the first to admit that it's kind of lacking. But it's a great record. It's the first one with Paul Nelson playing guitar. I think the best songs on here for me, I love Transgressor, the first tune. Cast Out is cool. Speed of Sound is another good one. But I don't think it's their strongest album song-wise from top to bottom. Productions, like I said, it's not great. I think Joe Bouchard from Blows to Cult produced this one, I believe. So production's a little lacking, in my opinion. But so yeah, I'm going number 3. Great record, but one has to be third, and this is number 3 for me.
And arguably the greatest album cover art, right?
Yes, done by Johannes, who,
That's
as you
right,
know, has
yeah.
done some Fates Warning records in the past
Yeah.
too. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Very similar artistic, right? The way it's drawn and painted to
Yeah.
Fates Warning.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's got a certain style that like is unmistakable. When you see
Absolutely.
him on his cover, you're like, there he is. You know,
It's very Spectre Within.
Yep.
Yeah,
It
definitely
was
that.
it was in the same period too, so it
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. That was
Yeah, I thought that when I saw this,
Yeah.
that made me think of the Spectre Within.
And the colors too. Colors and
Yeah.
shapes, definitely.
Yeah, he likes his blues, right?
Yeah.
All right, Rich, over to you. You're number 3.
All right, I'm going with the 85 album Freedom's Rise. Um, like he was saying, the production isn't the greatest. It's okay. But when I listened to this album, and I kind of did a rapid fire thing this morning with the three of them. This brings me back to bands like Attacker, Savage Grace, stuff like that. Even Queensryche, The Warning type of approach, which I felt with a few of the songs. Even the sound, the guitar sound feels a little bit like The Warning for me. Like Wielding an Iron Fist, Dark Tale, I wrote down the bass lines follows the guitars. A lot of bass line things happening in this record, the first
Yeah.
two, right?
Yep.
So Joe, you're gonna have a lot of work doing all that bass work, huh?
Yeah, it took a while to learn all these songs. Matt was a great bass player for sure.
Yeah, it's a
Very
lot
just
of. It's not that it's busy. It's just follow the guitars a lot, and there's a little
yeah,
nuances that are thrown in there. So it's pretty interesting.
yeah.
Reign of Angels is more melodic. The singing in the chorus, the Veils of Wrath felt like kind of 80s Gravedigger to me, almost like speed metal. And wrote down For the King is more in that 80s US style of power metal. So they have a little bit, of the speed metal going on, but the power metal kind of mixed on the first one. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So out of the three, it's my third.
Cool. All right.
Nice.
John, what do you put at number three?
Yeah, this was tough to rank because there was only three of them, and all three of them are really good. So I think Pete, like you mentioned, this sort of comes down to what you like as far as production values, because they do sound a little. I would say, especially between the first one and the second one, the production starts to change more, and each one of these albums is a little bit different too. You can kind of hear how the band was uh, progressing and pushing themselves to be more to do more in the music. But at number three for me, I have from 1987, Burn to My Touch. By the way, I love these. I love when bands on the back cover have individual shots of the guys.
Yeah.
And this guy's even, he even, this is Tony. He even has some smoke here coming in on the corner. I just love that, man. That's just so old school 80s. Love it.
It's very Metal Blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I
I've
love
always
it.
been a sucker for live shots of the band or band members on the back of an album cover. It's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's so cool. And like Joe mentioned here, Paul Nelson comes in on guitar, and I think he brings a little bit more of a technical edge to his playing. If I remember reading correctly, he was a student of Steve Vai. So that sort of the dual guitar thing becomes a little bit more active, I would think, on this. This is their second record. The production is a little bit better than the first one. There's the tunes that stand out for me on this. Transgressor, I think is great. It kind of has a new wave of British heavy metal vibe to me, but with speed metal riffs kind of thrown in. Birds of Prey, fast, evil sounding 80s old school metal. Cast Out. This is where I mentioned the guitar thing. Like I hear even a little bit of, if you remember, Jason Becker and Marty Friedman had that group Cacophony. It sort of reminds me of the guitar interplay that they have in that song. Portrait of Despair. It was another cool one. The rhythms almost feeling sort of proggy to me a little bit at times, or like technical thrash. I guess this is something that we'll probably talk about as we go through with this band. Are they traditional metal? Are they speed metal? Are they thrash metal? There's times where I find this really interesting because of their time frame coming out in the late 80s. You sort of get this transition phase where you got bands playing traditional metal but really amping up the speed. Then you have bands flipping over into thrash, and you also have death metals right around the corner. So it's this real sort of transition time, and I just think that that's really interesting, really cool. Blacklit Nights. I love this line here. I quoted it from the song "Burn the Steel, Link Our Mesh." I mean, that's just great. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. You give me swords, castles, that kind of thing. I'm all in. Let's see. The Mannix Mask Gives me a little bit of a fast, merciful fate vibe, which I dig. Walking Fire is a very cool instrumental with a lot of riffs and some gear shift time changes. Speed of Sound, that sort of threw me off. I was expect it starts off slow and kind of mellow, and I was thinking, oh, are they pulling a fast one on us here, calling it Speed of Sound, but it's going to be a slow, mellow one. But of course not. It all kicks in and it all like goes into hyperdrive. So yeah, this is a great record, but I got to put him in some order. So it comes in at number three for me, and I'll probably explain why this is number three for me as I go through my other picks. But that was my number three.
Yeah, hard to rank these. I went back and forth numerous times here, and sometimes you got to settle on a rank. You just got to leave it as is, not change it anymore. I'm going to go with Freedom's Rise. Their debut is my number three. Black Dragon Records in Europe, Ironworks here in the States. This is the original lineup. So you got Matt Vinci on bass. You got Tony Truglio, Pete McCarthy on guitars, Andy Machado on vocals, and Frank Cortez on drums. I hear more of the Priest influence on this record, and I love that Rich brought it up because I thought the same thing. I also hear like the Queensryche EP and the Warning a little bit at times on this album, which I'm not complaining about. I love both bands, really good stuff. I mean, Rage of Angels might be my favorite track on the album. Really, really good. I love his vocal screams on that. So good. Great leads on this whole thing. Dark Tale is really good. I'm also a big fan of For the King. And then you got Legionnaire. The two tracks that finish up the album are really, really good. The Legionnaire, it's got kind of like that new wave of British heavy metal gallop going. Killer riffs all over the album. Yeah, the production is what it is, right? I mean, it's nothing spectacular. It's a little on the murky side, but you know what? It just sounds raw and like a brand new young band on a, not a major label, right? So I think the songs are great. I think this might be the most aggressive sounding of all the albums. And I know, like, if you go out there and on various forums and things, I think there's a lot of people who love the debut more than the other two because of that rawness and how aggressive it is. But I think any of these could be number one. They're all really good, but Freedom's Rise is going to be at number three for me. Back to Joe.
Okay, so my number two is going to be Freedom's Rise, and I have this.
You got the other album cover. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
There's your
I've never
sword,
seen
John.
that.
There you go. John's like, oh, I like this.
Yeah, let me get my glasses on for this.
Yeah. Yeah, and
What
it's
is
got
that? Is that an original or what
I
is that
don't know if
cover?
it came first or after, but it is from Ironworks.
Yeah, that's the US release right there, which had
Yeah.
totally different album.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
Very
this
cool.
was the one that was on Black Dragon, and then they
Right.
totally changed it up for that one. So they're completely different,
And it does got some pictures and
There's your live
yeah,
shots,
completely
John.
different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never, yeah, cool.
So this was the first one I heard, obviously, and I prefer this one a little more. And kind of what Pete was saying. It's so raw and almost like innocent in a way. It's their first release, and it's just so pure and innocent version of heavy metal. You know what I mean? That's how I look at that. The production again, it's not great. I kind of prefer it to Burn to My Touch, and I just for me from top to bottom, it's got better songwriting for some reason. I don't know why, but Prodigy wielding Iron Fists is just great. Dark Tale is great. Upbeat tune. Amnesty, Rage of Angels might be my favorite on the record. Again, I love Vials of Wrath. We do playing live with these guys. We do play a number of songs from this record, which I really like. But some of the ones we don't play, like For the King, for instance, great song that Matt wrote. Just a great record. Like I say, just innocent metal. I think it sounds a little more new wave of British heavy metal ish than the next release. And again, maybe it's because I heard this. This was the first one I had heard. Just always stuck with me as a favorite. So I'm going to go number two, Freedom's Rise, with the alternate cover.
So Joe, so since you were kind of around the band at the time, what happened with Andy on vocals? Was he asked to leave the band? Did he choose to go on and do something else, or what happened there?
I can't really speak on that. Well, we were friendly with Liege Lord with Fate's Warning. We did kind of live on opposite ends of the state, so while we were acquaintances, we never really hung out. I don't know the real inner workings of the band, um, so I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. To be
Okay.
honest with you,
Good singer. I
great
like,
singer.
yeah, I like his
Absolutely.
work on the two albums.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do too.
absolutely.
I don't know what happened though. I should have got that story before I came on.
Okay. Well, if you find out, let me know.
I will.
All right, Rich, over to you. You're number two.
All right, two is Burn to My Touch. So I noticed with listening to this album after Freedom's Rise that I think Andy's vocals are a little more dramatic on this album, and it's like Transgressor had more in common with like Crimson Glory, I thought. So between the first one and this one, they're evolving a little bit more. The Birds of Prey, a little more US of the power metal with the higher vocals. I also hear Omen and Hellstar between the twin leads by the time you get to this second album. Cast Out, again, you got those higher vocals. Blacklit Nights, I really liked. It's got those progressive touches in the tempo. And like I said, those bass lines that they're dueling with the guitars. Again, that's happening a lot on this album. Maniac's Mask, I felt when you get to this album too, I'm hearing Lizzie Borden too in the arrangements. You know how Lizzie Borden had all those twin guitars going back and forth, the harmonies and everything with the riffs. So I'm hearing that in this album too. And then I wrote Legend down also, those bass lines under the riffs. I keep hearing there's so much bass work happening on these two albums.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. But it's something that definitely stands out when you're listening to the American wave of that 80s metal.
I
Yeah.
think the
How many
bass
times?
really stands out on this record too. And the bass
Oh
in the
yeah.
mix is very
Yeah.
high. I love.
Yeah.
How many times have we complained in the last like 20 or 30 years about like metal albums where you can't hear the bass at all?
Yeah.
So when you
Mhm.
listen to some of these older recordings, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we've been missing all these years, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Joe Bouchard produced this one, who's a bass player, obviously. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Yep. Yep. That could be. All right.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good album. Good album. John, over to you. You know,
Okay. Yeah, I'll reinforce I'm a bass player, so really enjoy it, especially on the first two records. The bass is really
Mhm.
out front there, and it is following the riff a lot, but it also breaks off from the riff, and he does kind of, Steve Harris like fills and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. So that definitely jumped out at me. Okay, my number two is from '88, Master Control. Don't know if it's the cover that is influencing me thinking this, but it just feels like the band, this is their third record. It just feels like the band is almost getting into technical thrash type or technical speed metal. Like
Mhm.
it's starting to get more technical. It's starting to get more proggy. It's the sci-fi vibe. I don't know if anybody remembers the Atari game Berserk. Whenever I see this cover, I think
Yeah.
of Berserk. There were these little robots in the game that you had to shoot, and
yeah.
this cover always reminds me of that. But yeah, so in on vocals now is Joseph Comillo. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Come
Joe
on.
is Como, is he still
Yeah,
the
come on.
vocalist in the band or
Yes.
okay.
Yep. Right now it's just Tony and Joe are the
The
last two.
original guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great range, lots of emotion and intensity in his voice. The production on this one is really good. Probably the best production, although the snare drum is a little bit much for me on this. The snare has this sort of sound to it that is a little over the top for me, but nothing distracting. Some of the highlights for me, Fear Itself. This is where I mentioned earlier, where there's a riff here in the beginning. Well, it starts off with this sort of mood setting intro, but then this riff comes in that sounds almost death metal, like to me with the drums and way the guitars are interacting. And then it sort of drops back into the speed thrash metal kind of thing. Eyes of the Storm, I liked that one. A good chugger. Master Control, super tight, fast ripping leads. There's a cover of the Rainbow song, Kill the King. I'm not usually a fan of stuff like this, and I'm a huge Rainbow, Richie Blackmore fan, but this works on here because they sort of make it even faster and they're so tight with it that it does sort of uh, do something unique with it. Feel the Blade is another chugging main riff that I really like. I think the chorus is great in this one. Feel the Blade, he's a living lie. That's a great line. Rapture, it's got that gallop, classic gallop thing. It sort of modulates up a half step, which is pretty cool. The chorus is great in this one too. Rapture, get ready to defend. Yeah, so this comes in at number two for me, probably for sort of the again, it feels like they're almost approaching like Watchtower. Who else would Mekong Delta, like those kind of bands that are doing like this almost technical like thing, and I hear them sort of pushing themselves and getting a little bit more technical, a little bit more advanced and proggish with their writing. So I think that's really cool. I'm not a huge extreme metal fan, so I love this era of speed, early thrash, stuff like that, where they're playing technical and doing different things, but it's still firmly within the classic metal sort of umbrella. So yeah, number two for me, Master Control.
Cool. I'm going to go with Burn to My Touch for my number two from 87, Combat Records. I think Paul Nelson's a nice addition to this band. It's weird how he went from this to like, then he went and played with Johnny Winter for like a million years, right? Doing kind of blues stuff. Kind of interesting. I love, first of all, I think the production is definitely different from the first album. It's a little bit more refined, whether you like that or not. It's up to your interpretation, I guess. But I think it sounds a little better. Transgressor is killer. I love that. For me, what makes this album a little bit better sounding from a production standpoint is I love the way the guitars are produced on this. They're just molten and super crunchy. I just absolutely love it. I think Andy is singing up a storm on this album. He sounds really, really good. He really came into his own on this record. Then he'd be gone, right? So, whatever. But Birds of Prey, great lead guitars on that. Cast Out has just killer riffs all over the place. And I think there's some really nice shredding guitars on here. There's tons and tons of guitar playing on this album, which I absolutely love. Blacklit Nights, that's kind of speed metal. Love the drumming on that. Really, really busy. The Mannix Mask, again, has that technical flair that John was just talking about. I think they really started to discover it on this record and then kind of ran with it on the next one. What else? Speed of Sound. I love the slow build of that. I almost kind of wish they did more of that type of thing. Really works well. It's like it's slow and atmospheric to start with, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just kicks into overdrive. Just really good. And Andy is just killing it on that track. I think it's a really great album. I think all of these are really great albums, but I like this one a lot, and I absolutely love the cover artwork. So that's my number two. Back to Joe for number one.
Yeah.
Okay, so by process of elimination, my number one is Master Control.
Is that a cutout you got there?
It is. It probably is. Yep.
You can spot those a mile away now. It's like,
I have a very large record collection, and 75% of them are probably cutouts.
I'll take the cutout more than the hole punch. I'd
Yeah.
rather have the corner cut than the hole punch because the hole punch sometimes just you can see it from a mile away.
Yeah. I think,
Or there used to be a little rectangle cutout too in the corner.
Yeah, that's kind of what he has, right? I didn't have my glasses on.
Not
But yours is-
the cut on the angle, but there was like a little rectangle that you get in some of them too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it.
Like somewhere towards the end of the album, not the actual corner.
we had a great store in New Haven, Connecticut, back when I was a young lad. And we take the bus every Saturday to Festoons Records. There's nothing but cutouts and used records. And I'd walk out of there with 10, 15 albums every Saturday.
Nice.
So most of my records have these little cuts or holes. Yep.
To have a time machine to be able to go back and I'd buy every record I could get my hands on, right?
Yeah.
So Joe, not to deviate from the conversation, but you mentioned the New Haven area. So What was it like growing up in that area before it became known as the pizza capital of the world, where you just, no, we have good pizza here. Now all of a sudden everybody knows about it. Must have been pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I live about 15, 20 minutes outside of New Haven, but every Saturday, me and my buds would take the bus, to New Haven. We'd get pizza. We'd go to we'd hit Festoons, get all the cutouts, get a big bag of records. Then we'd take a walk up to up by Yale. There was two other great record stores, Rhymes Records and Cutler's Records, and that's where we'd get all our Kerangs and our Metal Hammers and all our European magazines. Every Saturday it was a regular thing for us. I do miss those days.
Yeah.
The other day I was listening to Saxon's Denim and Leather, and it just totally
Love it.
reminded me of me being a 13, 14-year-old and taking the bus to New Haven every day with our Denims and Leathers on, collecting the magazines, and it was
Nice.
great. And before the internet, so we didn't even know what was coming out half the time. We just
No, you relied on those magazines, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'd see, and just like Pete always talks about, we'd go to Festoons and we'd buy albums just for the cover. So
Yeah.
this is cool metal. I never heard of these guys. I mean, I've got a closet full of records of bands that I probably haven't listened to in 30 years, but I just bought because of the cover.
Nice.
It was a great way to grow up.
And
Yeah.
bands used to release records like you mentioned Saxon. What is it? Is it Wheels of Steel and Denim and Leather that came out in the same year? I forget. They have
Strong Arm, I think.
Strong
Yeah, it might
Arm.
have been
Yeah,
Strong
yeah,
Arm.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, and like you said, you just walk into the record store and it was like, oh, they've got a new album out because bands were releasing albums once a year, every 9 months. Then they throw in a live record. You get the studio albums 4 months later, there'd be a live. So there was just constantly like stuff coming out. It isn't like now where bands take 5 to 7 years between records.
And then with all the pre-release singles, the entire album before it actually comes out. When it comes out, it's
Yeah.
like no big deal anymore. It's like, I've already
Yeah.
heard the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I prefer the old days. It was so much better back then.
Me too.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to deviate from the conversation.
No. So yeah, Master Control is my number one. Like we all said, they're all so close. They all could have been number one, but I like this album the best. And while Andy was a great singer, I prefer Joe. Joe is so powerful on this record, and is the best of the three production wise. Produced by Terry Date, who produced one of my favorite heavy metal albums of all time, the debut from Metal Church, which the production on that's great.
Oh yeah.
Terry Date produced this. He almost produced the Fates Warning album once upon a time. I don't remember why, but it didn't work out. But and this was recorded at the Carriage House, which is also in Connecticut, right in Stamford, where Fates Warning recorded two of their albums, two, maybe even three. And it's still there to this day. Johnny Mountainview. It's still there. So this was recorded right locally for them because they're from Stamford. But yeah, I think the music's a little more refined. And like somebody said, it's getting a little more into a thrashy vein, some faster tunes. But I think the songwriting is generally better. I think they're just getting used to working with Paul Nelson. So I think that the songwriting was coming together with him second time around. The guitar playing is fantastic on this album. The dual leads and is awesome. And Matt sounds awesome as ever on this record. So my favorite songs, like Fear Itself is a great one. Eye of the Storm. And I know Pete, especially is not a huge fan of covers, and I feel the same way most of the time. But I really like the Kill the King cover. Something that we still play live. It's still a highlight of the show for a lot of people. Great pick for a cover, and I think they do a great job. They speed it up and make it their own a little bit, but keep it true to the original. I really like it. Feel the Blade, another great one. I think my favorite song on the album might be Fallout. That's a great tune. Starts off kind of slow and builds up, kind of like Speed of Sound. Rapture's another great one. So I think it's the best. I think it's the best of the three, production-wise, song-wise. I like the direction they were going. It's too bad we never got to hear where that direction was going to take them, but they ended their recording career far too early, in my opinion.
I would agree. Cool. Rich, why don't you talk about Master Control a little bit?
Okay. Yep. It's my number one. I think it's definitely the most maybe consistent musically out of the three of them, because it definitely has more of a direction. Like we're saying, it's a little bit heavier, a little bit faster, a little more speed metal, not really that power metal thing going on. So the bands that I was thinking of, the other two albums, I would mention a few different ones. This one, I'm kind of hearing more of Vicious Rumors with the aggression and the dual guitars going with each other. I hear Malice too. Remember that band?
Oh,
Great band.
So there's more kind of a focus and a direction to this record out of the three of them. So and a better production, of course, too. And I like Joe better as a singer. Not anything against the other singer, Andy, but I think his voice works better. Um, so the songs I wrote down, Fear Itself, Eye of the Storm reminds me a little bit of Old Faith's Warning, of course. Master Control. I'm hearing like the first two Metal Church albums a little bit of that influence, where they're kind of traditional metal, but they got that speed metal thing going on with the powerful riffs. Soldier, the solo section, and Rapture, another one I really like with the drive to that beat that's in that song. So those are probably my 5 favorites out of the album. But overall, it's just consistent throughout, and that's why I like it the best out of the 3.
Nice.
all right,
Okay.
John. First album.
Yep, first album. As I mentioned at the beginning, and we all sort of said it, all these albums are great. So it sort of comes down to personal preferences. So for me, my number one is from '85, Freedom's Rise. And for me, that personal preference is I personally like sort of murky, lo-fi, but in a good way, productions. I love these. Joe, I think you might have said it like, you know, young bands just trying to figure out what they're doing type of thing. They don't know what they're doing, but it comes out and it just sounds, to me, it sounds really cool. I love that. So I like the production on this. It reminds me of Pete and I did an episode on Warlord, and Rich, Pete, and I did an episode on Omen. So this album, out of the 3, feels the most like those bands. Like they haven't quite gotten into as much of the speed metal on this one as they would as they sort of push the envelope with the other 2 records. So I think that's why I probably also prefer this one a little bit, because that's my comfort zone is just classic, early 80s metal. The cover, anybody out there, a little trivia thing. The cover is by Eric Larnoy, who also did the back illustration on Candlemass's Epicus Doomicus Metallicus by Candlemass, was released on Black Dragon Records, as was this first record, Black Dragon Records. At least my version is the Black Dragon Records version. Yeah, so this has the perfect amount of reverb and atmosphere for me. Prodigy, now I'm listening to it on the vinyl, so I can't tell when some of them start and end, but Prodigy, I think, is a cool short instrumental, sort of sets the mood with the harmonized guitars. Then Wielding Iron Fists. That is such a cool title. I love it. When I first started getting into collecting vinyl in like the late 90s, I'd walk in and I'd see something like this. And, this is the early days of the internet. So I didn't know a lot of these bands. I see something, okay, that's a really cool cover, but sometimes you had to be careful, right? You didn't know. It could be something else. You flip the back, you see the individual band. Okay, all right, I think we're safe. But you never know. It could still be like a glam LA thing, right? Then you look and see a title like Wielding Iron Fists, and you're just like, yeah, I know this is going to be good. So I absolutely love that title. Nice guitar runs. And you mentioned the bass playing. There's great bass playing all over all these records, but especially the first 2 really jump out at me. Dark Tale, I love the sort of dark, fast driving, dark classic metal vibe to it. The chorus, Focus, Seize It, Flee It, Strife, great stuff. Amnesty, great chorus vocals. Rage of Angels gives me a '70s Priest vibe. Some of you guys have mentioned that already. What is this? Veils of Wrath, cool double bass drum blaster, Warriors Farewell. See, this is where I love that kind of battle metal vibe, and I get that from here. We talked about Omen and Warlord. They're all that kind of like, let's put our armor on and storm a castle type of thing. For the King, like the nice falsetto vocal lines. Legionnaire, it's got that maybe it's the title of the song, but it's got that gallop in it, which gives me sort of a Iron Maiden vibe. Again, that sort of, let's get on our horse, ride into battle thing that I just love. The over-the-top guitar solo is great. So for me, I just have a soft spot in my heart for this type of stuff. Kind of murky, but just tons of atmosphere to the production. Sounds like it was recorded in a church or something. It just got that vibe to it that I just absolutely love from this early 80s classic, metal stuff.
Nice. All right. Well, no surprise here. My number one is Master Control. Third and final album. Hopefully, it won't be the final album, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Metal Blade Records, first album with Joe Comio on vocals, who went on to work and sing for Annihilator for a couple albums. Also play guitar in Overkill. So, Joe, you obviously in the band now. Does he play any guitar at all in Liege Lord currently, or have you? I mean, he's a pretty good guitar player as well, right?
Yeah. Nope. He's strictly
Just sing.
vocalist.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Cool. I really like his voice a lot. I get a lot of Bruce Dickinson vibes with his voice, like big time. And musically, this album is a bit different than the first two. I hear a bit of like first two Overkill albums, Feel the Fire and Taking Over, from the arrangements and whatnot, and maybe the way the guitars are produced. I think it really works with Joe's vocals. I think it's really good. Eye of the Storm, so good. I love Master Control. I think that's just a great, great track. Feel the Fire, killer. Again, whether you call it thrash or speed metal, it's just amazing. As Joe mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of bands doing covers, especially like early in their careers, but they do a bang up job on Kill the King. And
Mhm.
what I like is that it's not a typical song that most metal bands would cover.
Yeah.
Picking that song takes a lot of balls, and they really pull it off really, really well. Soldier's Fortune is great. Feel the Blade, that's kind of more mid-paced. Um, Broken Wasteland is absolutely killer. I love Rapture. And Suspicion sounds like early Maiden to me, like first like three albums or so. And then Fallout, just majestic, almost kind of prog metally. I hear like in spots on this album also maybe the band maybe want to go in a direction that kind of Fates Warning we're going into on like No Exit, right? Awaken the Guardian, No Exit. So really cool stuff. I think it's a really, really strong album that kind of caps off a great little discography that there's no stinker at all in the three of these, and I think anybody could feel safe in taking the plunge into Liege Lord if you haven't already, starting with any one of these. They're all
Yeah.
great. You can get all three of them. I would highly recommend it, but pick one, see if you like it. You'll want all three of them without a doubt. So really, really good catalog. And so to kind of circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, so Joe knows these guys for ages, and obviously they lost their bass player who passed away a little year and a half ago, and Joe now is filling in the bass spot in the band, and the band have been active playing stuff. So maybe Joe, if you can kind of talk a little bit about your joining the band and what you guys have been doing, and is there any talk at all somewhere down the road of maybe doing new music?
Okay. Yeah, I've known these guys from us and Fates Warning both came up in the same scene in Connecticut, like you said. I mean, we were never really close, but we were acquaintances. We would see each other at the same shows, and it was always a friendly rivalry, but never, it wasn't anything more than that. Great guys. Always, I've known Tony especially for a long time. So a couple of years ago, out of the blue, a mutual friend of ours, gave Tony my contact information. Out of blue, he gave me a call, and I was actually honored. I mean, Matt's a great bass player. I love the music, as you can see. I've had the albums forever, and so I immediately said yes to doing a show. Like they had already had this Keep It True, which was a tribute to Matt festival in Germany they already had that book, so they needed a bass player, and that was the first one Tony thought of, and Joe. So we got together, we rehearsed half a dozen times. Currently in the band, it's not. I don't know who's officially in the band or not, but Frank Gilchrist from Riot is playing drums. He's just a monster drummer. And a kid named Danny Wacker has been playing the other lead guitar slot for a few years now. I think he's pretty much a permanent member of the band. Great guitar player, great kid. And Tony and Joe, obviously, and me. So we did a show in Germany, and we did a couple more shows since. We did a local show here in Connecticut, like an outdoor festival over the summer, and we did a festival in Madison, Wisconsin last year too. Really cool festival. So they asked me if I wanted to do some more shows this year. So sure, yeah. We're doing Hell's Heroes next week, and it's funny. A couple of bands mentioned in this conversation were Omen and Warlord, and they're also both playing at that festival.
Nice.
Awesome.
Headlining the next day, and I was just texting with Kenny from Omen, and looking forward to seeing him. I used to be really good friends with Omen, and I mentioned to Pete the other day online that their second singer, Coburn Farr, had just passed away earlier this week.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's too bad. They were all great guys. I was really good friends with Omen at the time, way back in that area. It's too bad about Coburn, but I still talk to Kenny now and then, message him. Jody, their original bass player, I heard has some kind of traumatic brain injury he suffered a few years back, so he's not active anymore. But it's too bad. He was a great guy. So they've had their problems. Getting back to Liege Lord, yeah. So we're doing Hell's Heroes 2 weeks, and a week after that, we're doing a festival. We're headlining it. Us and I think Lizzie Borden's the second day, and Satan's on it. A lot of good bands called 2 Minutes to Tulsa.
Wow.
We're doing that, and we got a gig coming up, I think the end of August in Brooklyn, New York, and I think us and Jack Panzer are co-headliners. That should be pretty cool. So they pick up gigs now and then.
Rich's eyes just lit up. It's like, oh, right.
some great festivals that we've been hooked up with. Because I'm an old metal fan, so I'm getting to see Satan twice in 2 weeks span.
Saw them last year.
Yeah, I mean, that first album is it's classic.
Good stuff.
And a lot of good bands like that. Like I said, Lizzie Borden, Jack Panzer, who Mark. I still communicate with Mark Briotti from Jack Panzer. In fact, he flew out all the way to Madison to see Liege Lord when we did that festival in Madison, Wisconsin, just to see us. They're good friends too. So Mark's a great guy. So yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it. Me and Frank, like I said, from Riot, we're both kind of part-time or temporary members. We don't know. We just keep going. And as far as new music, we're actually doing 2 new songs in the set.
Nice.
That they had written before Matt died. In fact, one of them was the last song Matt had written before he passed away. So apparently they do have a whole album's worth of songs written and demoed. I've only heard the 2 that we're playing live. So there is talk of recording a new record. I haven't heard. There's no details. There's no set plans. They asked me if I'd be interested in recording it with them if they do it, and I certainly would be. So there's no timetable on it. Right. They've been talking about since I've been back with them, but it's a very good possibility. Yes,
that's great news. Really good news.
And the 2 new songs I've heard are killer.
Do you guys know? Do you guys know how available the 3 CDs are? Because I know this is a reissue, and then the second one was reissued, but I don't see anything about the first one. Was that ever remastered and reissued?
I don't believe it has.
Pete or John, you guys know? Actually.
So the one that I just picked up, Rich, was reissued in 2019 on Eclipse Records.
Okay, cool.
Search for it; you can find it. In fact, let me see if I can get you the link of where I got it from.
Okay, cool.
It's definitely worth getting.
Yeah.
And of course, Joe, Withering Scorn, bass player for Withering Scorn. I've heard some news that you guys got some new music in the works there as well.
We are 95% done recording it. Just have to finish, I think, vocals on a couple songs, and then add some ear candy and and mix it, and that'll be done. Hopefully, we can have that out by fall. I'm hoping.
Okay.
But we're very happy with the way it came out. It's our second time around, so we're more comfortable writing and recording together. So I think it's a huge step forward for us. Similar vein, still very fast and heavy, but we have a couple more slower, moodier, longer type songs, which we think came out really good. Henning sounds really, really good on this record. So we're hoping to have that out, like I said, by fall. So it's going really well.
Awesome.
We have a title, but I don't think I'm allowed to say it.
That's fine. Okay. For those who missed the first album or didn't check it out, you really should. Of course, also in the band, we've got the Drover brothers, right? Glenn and Sean. So yeah, good stuff. Looking forward to hearing that as well. Cool. John, what's going on over at the Lair? Anything upcoming?
The usual talking heavy metal and hard rock. Before I go though, I want to show this. Last time I was here, or last time we were here talking about we were ranking Omen. I mentioned this book that I did not have a copy in my hand at the time. After that episode, I had like 3 or 4 people send me a message like, I went and I bought it as soon as I heard you talk about it. This is an awesome book, Heroes of the Metal Underground. You can get it on Amazon. As you can see, it's super thick. Pictures, interviews with US metal bands. Liege Lord, unfortunately, is not in here because this book is mostly like bands that only released independent albums. Like
So
they were
even
never
more
on
underground than Liege Lord. Right?
Exactly. Like I don't even think Manila Road, I don't think is in here. I mean, this is digging really, really deep, people. We're going to the core of the earth here, for this book. But it is super, super cool. I love sitting down, just opening it up, reading about some band, looking them up on YouTube to hear this 3-song demo that they only ever released themselves. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to shout this out. I know some people grabbed it after our last episode, but you can see the cover available on Amazon.
Nice. Very cool. Rich, anything, you got any cool things coming up on Brave Words that you're working on or Metal Asylum?
Working on a couple of reviews. Just did the Warbringer CD, new album. Just saw concerts. I saw Vandenberg in New Jersey, Adrian Vandenberg. He did a whole Whitesnake set with 3 Vandenberg songs. So
yeah,
I wanted more, but okay.
You squeezed a couple in at least. He knew you were
got
coming.
3 of them. I wanted 3 from the second album, Headed for a Storm, but whatever. But it was cool. He played good. His singer's great. Matt's from
Ben.
Yeah, he's from Yngwie Malmsteen Facing the Animal album and
he sang with
Candlemass
for a while.
He was with Candlemass for a little bit, yeah.
So it was a good show. Good to hear those Whitesnake songs and those Vandenberg songs.
I think for a lot of us, I think that tour would have been better with like 3 Whitesnake songs and the rest of the set.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping for because I really love those 3 Vandenberg albums and the newer 2 were good too. But whatever, it was still cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm sure he was playing great.
Yeah, that's the most recent.
Great guitar player. Yeah, cool. All right, so what we got coming up?
I got to meet him too afterwards. Very nice guy.
Oh, really? Cool.
Nice.
That's nice.
Oh, cool.
I heard he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's nice.
Pretty cool. All right, so that's a wrap, folks. Liege Lord, rank the albums as you like them down in the comments below. And like we said, if you've never heard any of these 3, go out and listen to them. I think you'll really like what you hear. 3 really, really great albums. Go check them out. And I do want to thank Joe for joining us here. I think this was a pretty good combination. Maybe we'll have Joe back on again to do a ranking the album show. If he's up for it, of course. Anytime?
Anytime, Pete. Anytime.
I think we know your wheelhouse, Joe. So I think kind of like old 80s stuff would be right up your alley. So cool. So please make sure you go check out Lair the Alchemist YouTube channel. Go give them a like and a subscribe over there. Rich and I will be back with the next episode of New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal Primer.
Yeah.
Probably in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. And go out and see Liege Lord on tour with Joe DiBiase on bass guitar. And we'll see you next time here on Ranking the Albums. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together, all the damn time. For John Gaffney, Rich Catino, and Joe DiBiase, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll see you Tuesday for In the Prog Seat. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.